So could you tell me about your work with Episcopalians?
Yeah, well, Episcopalians have been in there with everybody else. There was an Episcopalian priest in New Orleans, Joseph Das, who was also a lawyer and worked with one of the death penalties, Ernest Knighton, on death row in Louisiana. So Joseph was not only a minister, but he was also his lawyer. And when Ernest Knighton was executed, Joseph Das and his whole congregation came with him on this journey of understanding about the death penalty, how it works, and Joseph Das was in real grief. He later has become a bishop, and he really helped the Episcopalians in the Northeast to get a hold of this issue because he had that inside personal experience on it. Then there's this wonderful Episcopalian parish right next to the St. Thomas housing projects here in the Garden District, Trinity Episcopal, and they formed a partnership with us at Hope House, and they would actually have people writing letters to the governor and appealing for people who were going to be executed on death row, going in to visit death row prisoners. And so they were wonderful too. In fact, the beginnings, when I first started out in Louisiana, beginning to oppose the death penalty, the Episcopalians were some of the people who were in there with me at first.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you have any advice for somebody who is going to vote yes on 34, but has never been involved and never done more than maybe watch Dead Man Walking?
Yeah. Well, you know, once we put our hands on this life rope and we begin to act for justice, that the death penalty is just the peak of a whole pinnacle, and sitting right under it is reform of the prison system. I mean, we have young people tried as adults, juveniles, some as young as 15, going into prison for life without parole. And prison is the throwing away of human life and the resources of human life. And so there's a lot waiting for us, just in terms of prisons, to change us from a society of retribution and punishment, throwing people away, to restoring life. And so there's a lot waiting for us. But the first pulling on the rope has got to be that we take death off the table and not have it in the hands of our government to be able to decide who lives and who dies.
Great. One final question, please. For Episcopalians, you know, we're all over the map in what we believe, and so there are those of us who are going to vote no on 34. And so what would you say to somebody who is in favor of the death penalty?
I'd want to talk to them about why they're for it, and I bet I could guess 3 of the top reasons, if they go in there and they vote yes on 34, what they're thinking. One is they may be convinced the only way to deter violent criminals is to really have a violent punishment that they may get, that it's a deterrent. Another thing that may be in their hearts is they're so outraged over the death of innocent people that they can't tolerate the thought that these people would be allowed to live. And don't you relinquish your right to live because you took the life of an innocent person. And then people may be thinking, well, if I was a victim's family, I wouldn't want the person to live. They just assume that that's where they'd be and that I would want the death penalty. How can I deprive other victims' families of that? And I just want to say to them, you need to start talking to people who've been victims of violent crime. And actually, you will help more victims of violent crime by replacing this billion-dollar thing every 5 years and putting resources into solving cold cases, solving unsolved murders and rapes. You'll be helping more victims' families by doing that than by pouring the millions and billions, actually, that California spent into executing a few people.
Wonderful. Anything else you want to say to Episcopalians?
Yeah, we're believers in Jesus. What happened to Jesus? I mean, Jesus is quoted for death. Jesus is quoted for war. What happened? Did Jesus get domesticated? I mean, Jesus is the one who said an eye for an eye. You've heard it said, but I say to you, love your enemy. Well, what did he mean? It didn't mean that you have these glowing feelings, oh, I love all people who hurt me. It just means that if we let that hatred get in our hearts, which is legalized hatred when you kill somebody, then we've lost really the heart of compassion that the gospel of Jesus is about. And it's a journey of conversion. I'm always on a journey of conversions. We're never done. And that's another thing too. Why give the state the right to decide that God's done with a person and we're going to nip their life now and send them into eternity? How do we know maybe God doesn't have further plans for this person?